The desert stretched endlessly, silent and empty, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The sun burned the sand into gold, and the wind carried whispers that no one could explain. In this lonely wasteland, a group of explorers drove slowly, their jeep rattling over the dunes. For hours they had seen nothing but sand and stone. Tired eyes scanned the horizon, expecting only more emptiness. But then, one of them suddenly shouted, "Stop! Look there!" At first, the others thought it was only a strange shadow or a trick of light. But as they squinted, they saw something rising out of the sand. It was huge, dark, and unnatural, something that did not belong in the desert. The jeep came to a halt, and the explorers stepped out. Heat pressed down on their shoulders, but a chill ran through their bodies. Before them lay a massive structure, half buried in sand. Its sharp edges and twisted frame told one truth. It was not stone. It was metal. They walked closer. The surface was blackened, scarred by fire, as if it had fallen from the sky in a violent storm long ago. Strange marks ran across the surface, glowing faintly even in daylight. The explorers froze. None of them had ever seen symbols like these before. They weren't words from any human language. One of them whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud, This is not from Earth." The leader of the group touched the strange metal. It was cold, unnaturally cold, as though it carried the memory of deep space. His hand trembled. He could feel faint vibrations beneath his palm, like a heart struggling to beat again after centuries of silence. The desert wind howled softly, but to the humans standing there, it almost sounded like a voice, distant, broken, calling out from the wreck. They circled around the massive shape, realizing it was not just a piece of metal. It was a ship, a starship. The discovery spread quickly. Within hours, scientists, soldiers, and engineers rushed to the site. Floodlights lit up the desert night, turning the ancient wreck into a glowing monster lying in its grave. The experts studied the wreckage with awe and fear. It was old, so old that sand had swallowed half of it, but still it carried life. Strange pulses of light blinked inside its cracks, like the ship was breathing. Some said it was dead. Others swore it was only sleeping. The soldiers kept their weapons ready. They did not like this place. They felt watched, as though invisible eyes were studying them from the shadows of the broken hull. Finally, a small team of brave explorers stepped inside through a torn section of the ship. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing walls smooth as glass. The same glowing symbols stretched across the passageways, and sometimes they flickered as if reacting to the humans' presence. The air inside was heavy, almost frozen. Every step echoed, as though the ship was listening. Dust lay thick on the ground, untouched for centuries. The silence was so deep it pressed against their ears. At the end of a long corridor, they found a chamber. The walls curved upward like the ribs of a giant beast. Broken panels and shattered screens lined the room. In the center stood a huge chair, clearly made for someone not human. The explorers stared in silence. This was the command center, the heart of the ship. And yet it was empty. No bodies. No traces of the crew. Just silence, endless silence. "Why did they leave?" someone whispered. No one had an answer. Some believed the aliens abandoned it after a great battle. Others thought something terrible had happened inside, something that drove the crew away. And some whispered that maybe the ship itself rejected them. Outside, the night deepened. The desert stars shone cold and bright above, as if watching history unfold. Around the wreck, men and women worked with restless energy. Every expert knew what this meant. Humanity had found proof they were not alone. But more than that, they had found technology far beyond their own. The leader of the first explorers stood apart, gazing at the massive shadow of the ship. A strange feeling grew inside him, a mix of fear, hope, and destiny. This was not a ruin to be forgotten. This was a test, perhaps even a gift. He whispered to himself, "They abandoned it, but we will not." The ship seemed to answer him with a faint hum, so soft it could be mistaken for the wind. Yet, those close enough to hear it felt a shiver down their spines. The voice of the desert was no longer empty. It carried a message only the bold could understand. Wake me. Rebuild me. I am not finished. That night, humanity made a silent promise. The broken starship would rise again, not as a relic of alien defeat, but as a symbol of human strength. And far beyond the stars, in places no human had yet seen, ancient enemies stirred, sensing what was happening. They had left the ship behind, thinking it would remain a corpse forever. But they had underestimated one thing: the stubborn will of humanity. The desert discovery was not just the beginning of science. It was the beginning of retribution. The desert camp did not sleep that night. Bright floodlights burned against the endless darkness, turning the broken starship into a glowing mountain of shadows. Soldiers patrolled the edges, their eyes sharp, their hands tight on their weapons. Scientists moved with excitement and fear, collecting samples, scanning strange metals, and taking pictures of glowing alien symbols. Everyone knew they were standing on history. This was not just an old wreck. This was proof of something greater, proof that humans were not alone. But what terrified them was not the ship itself. It was the question echoing in every heart. Why was it left here? The research team gathered inside a temporary tent. Maps, sketches, and glowing screens covered the tables. At the center was the leader of the expedition. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a deep unease. "This ship is older than any of our civilizations," he said. "The metals are not from Earth. The energy running through it is still alive, even after centuries. Whatever left this behind didn't want to return." A silence followed his words. Some scientists nodded with awe, others shivered. One of them finally whispered, "Or maybe they wanted someone else to find it." The group fell quiet. Outside, the desert wind howled against the tents like a warning. The next day, a team of engineers entered the ship with heavy equipment. They pushed deeper into the corridors, following the faint light that flickered on the walls. Every step felt heavier, every sound sharper. The deeper they went, the more alive the ship felt. The walls seemed to shift with their movements, as though watching. Strange hums echoed through the halls, sometimes low, sometimes sharp, almost like whispers in a forgotten tongue. One engineer froze, swearing he heard his own name carried by the hum. The others laughed nervously, but none of them felt safe. In one chamber, they discovered a massive panel of alien symbols. When touched, the panel lit up, throwing golden light across the room. Everyone stepped back in shock as the symbols rearranged themselves, forming patterns none of them understood. It was as though the ship was trying to communicate, trying to wake up. The scientists rushed in with scanners and tools. They argued over theories. Was it a warning? A memory? A command? No one could agree. But one thing was clear: the starship was not dead. Later, a young technician found something strange while inspecting the floor of another chamber. He brushed away layers of sand and dust, revealing a hatch. With effort, they forced it open, and a hidden passage appeared, leading down into the dark. Against orders, the technician went first. The tunnel was narrow and steep. The air grew colder with every step. His flashlight revealed pipes and strange crystal-like veins running along the walls. They pulsed with light, like blood moving through veins. At the bottom, he entered a hidden chamber. His light swept across rows of empty pods, huge, coffin-shaped containers made of black glass. Cracks ran across some of them, and others lay shattered. They were not human-sized. They were larger, built for beings taller, stronger. The technician's breath caught in his throat. He realized these were not cargo containers. They were stasis pods, sleeping chambers. His voice shook as he called it in. Soon, the entire team crowded into the hidden chamber, staring at the long line of alien pods. Questions filled the air. Who were they? Where did they go? Why were the pods empty? Then someone noticed a single pod still sealed, faint light pulsing inside. The group froze. Was it alive? Was something still inside, waiting to wake? Soldiers raised their weapons instantly. The scientists argued. Some wanted to open it, others demanded it be left untouched. The leader stood silent, torn between fear and curiosity. Finally, he ordered, "Not yet. We study it first." As they argued, the ship seemed to respond. Lights flickered across the walls, the hum grew louder, and a vibration shook the floor. Dust rained down from the ceiling as if the starship itself was warning them. "Do not disturb what sleeps." The team retreated, sealing the chamber for the night. But none of them slept. The image of the glowing pod haunted their minds. If even one alien still lived, then humanity was no longer just studying a wreck. They were trespassing on something sacred, something dangerous. That night, the leader stood alone at the edge of the camp, staring at the massive silhouette of the ship. His heart was heavy with questions. Why had the aliens left this here? Did they abandon it, or did they bury it, hoping no one would ever find it? The desert was silent, but the ship was not. Its whispers grew stronger in his mind, pulling at him like a hidden force. "Finish me. Rebuild me. Claim me." The man clenched his fists. Deep inside, he knew the truth. Humanity could not walk away. Whatever secrets this wreck carried, they would uncover them. Whatever danger it held, they would face it. For this was no longer just an alien starship. It was becoming something more, something waiting to rise again. Not as alien, but as a fusion of both. And far across the stars, unseen eyes flickered awake. The signal had been noticed. The guardians of the wreck, the ones who abandoned it long ago, were now aware. Humanity had touched what was not meant for them. The desert discovery was no longer silent. It had become a call, and in the cold corners of the galaxy, the old masters of the ship began to stir. The desert starship did not remain silent for long. Once the discovery was confirmed, the world could not ignore it. Governments argued, scientists debated, and soldiers prepared. Finally, a decision was made. The wreck would not stay buried. Humanity would study it, repair it, and perhaps even claim it as their own. The camp grew larger every day. Trucks rumbled across the dunes, carrying heavy machines, generators, and crates of equipment. Helicopters circled above. Where once there was only sand, now there stood towers of lights, rows of tents, and fences of steel. The desert became a fortress, and at its heart lay the alien ship, silent, watching, waiting. Engineers climbed across its broken hull, attaching cranes and cables. Sparks lit the night as welding torches touched alien metal. At first, progress was slow. The ship resisted them. Its surfaces were hard, its systems impossible to read. But humans were stubborn. They broke down one mystery after another. Slowly, the starship began to yield its secrets. Inside, teams worked day and night. They mapped out the corridors, repaired cracked panels, and connected human devices to alien circuits. Strange energy flowed through the walls, refusing to die. When human wires touched the alien veins, sparks danced, and lights flickered to life. One night, a young engineer accidentally connected a human generator to an alien console. The ground shook, and the ship roared with sudden power. Lights blazed across the halls, and for the first time in centuries, the starship awoke. The camp outside froze as the sound of engines echoed beneath the sand. Soldiers raised their weapons, thinking something was about to emerge. But after a few minutes, the roar faded, leaving only silence and faint glowing symbols. The leader of the project stood on the hull, his face lit by the ship's soft glow. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "It wants to live again." From that night onward, the work changed. No longer were they just studying. They were rebuilding. Every broken plate of metal, every shattered panel, was replaced with human steel and wires. Where the aliens had left emptiness, humans filled it with their own technology. Piece by piece, the broken wreck was reborn. It was not purely alien anymore. It was becoming something new, something that carried both alien power and human will. The soldiers watched nervously. They saw scientists smiling with excitement, but to them, the ship was a beast in chains. They did not trust it. They whispered that one day, it might turn against its new masters. Yet deep inside, even they felt pride. Humanity had taken something left to rot, and was forcing it back to life. Weeks passed. The desert fortress grew busier. Reports came that signals from the ship had been detected in deep space. Something or someone might be listening, but the humans did not stop. Curiosity and ambition pushed them forward. The workers noticed strange changes. Sometimes the ship seemed to help them. Panels would light up at the right moment, doors would unlock without effort, and alien symbols would shift into new patterns. It was as though the ship itself was guiding their hands, teaching them how to restore it. At night, when the floodlights were dim and most of the workers slept, a low hum filled the camp. The starship's heart was beating again. Some swore they heard whispers in the hum, voices that were not human but not hostile either. One evening, the leader gathered the team around the ship's central chamber. "Look at it," he said, his voice heavy with meaning. "This is no longer a ruin. It is no longer abandoned. It is ours now, and it will rise again." The crew erupted with cheers, though a few remained silent, troubled by thoughts of what might come. That night, a storm rolled across the desert. Lightning tore the sky, thunder shook the earth, and rain lashed against the metal hull. But inside the camp, the starship shone brighter than the storm, its lights pulsing like a living heart. It was as if it fed on the chaos around it, drawing strength from the storm itself. By dawn, the ship looked different. Its broken scars had been covered with human steel. Its dead systems glowed with new power. What had once been a tomb was becoming a war machine again. Far above, hidden beyond human eyes, fleets stirred in the dark of space. The signal of the ship's rebirth had spread. The old masters knew it was alive again. Fear gripped them, not because the ship was awake, but because humans had touched it. Humans had claimed it. The desert had become the birthplace of something unstoppable. Humanity had rebuilt what aliens abandoned. And in doing so, they had created a new kind of power, a power that would soon change the galaxy forever. The desert ship was no longer silent. Lights now pulsed across its alien skin, mixing with human steel. Its broken bones were being replaced, its dead systems reborn. The humans worked day and night, their tools singing, their hands covered in dust and sweat. They were proud. They were blind. Because far beyond Earth, across the cold emptiness of space, someone was watching. In the black void, an alien listening station stirred. For centuries it had been silent, waiting, listening for a signal it was never supposed to hear again. And then, one night, the signal came. A heartbeat. A hum. The old ship they had abandoned on Earth was alive once more. The watchers were not human. Their forms were tall and thin, their skin dark like polished stone, their eyes glowing with pale fire. They spoke without words, their minds touching like ripples in water. Fear spread through them. The humans had touched what was forbidden. The humans were rebuilding what had been meant to die. "They are not ready," one of the aliens whispered into the minds of the others. "They are dangerous," another replied. "They must be stopped," a third hissed. But deep inside their voices, there was something else, doubt. They had underestimated humans before. Perhaps they were underestimating them again. Back on Earth, the workers continued without knowing they had been discovered. The camp was alive with energy. Soldiers trained, scientists tested, and engineers welded. The starship was no longer a wreck. It was becoming a monster in chains, pulling harder every day. At night, some workers claimed they saw shadows moving across the dunes. Dark shapes that disappeared when approached. Whispers in the wind that were not from the desert. Soldiers grew uneasy. The leader dismissed it as fear, but he too felt the heavy eyes of something unseen pressing down on them. Inside the ship, strange things began to happen. Panels they had repaired shifted on their own. Doors locked and unlocked without command. Symbols glowed in patterns the humans did not understand. It was as if the ship knew it was being hunted. One night, as the camp lay quiet, the leader stood on the hull, staring at the stars. His mind was restless. He thought of the glowing pod they had found deep inside. He thought of the whispers in the walls. And he thought of a simple truth. Humanity was now part of something much bigger. Suddenly, The ship beneath him trembled. A faint image flickered across the panels near the command chamber. Not clear, not sharp, but a shadow. A figure tall alien watching. It lasted only a moment before fading. But it left the leader shaken. Was the ship showing him a memory, or was it showing him the enemy? The next morning, strange readings arrived from Earth satellites. Unknown signals were detected near the edges of the solar system. They did not match any natural source. They were organized, intelligent. Something was out there watching from the dark. Fear spread in the camp. Some wanted to stop the project immediately. If they know we are rebuilding it, one scientist argued, they will come. And when they come, they will not forgive. But the leader's voice was calm, steady, and full of steel. Then let them come. We will be ready. The workers stared at him in silence. Deep down, they knew he was right. To stop now would change nothing. The signal had already gone out. The shadows in the stars already knew. So they worked harder, faster, more desperate. The desert roared with machines, and the starship grew stronger every day. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of space, alien fleets began to stir. Huge warships powered up, their weapons glowing. Commanders whispered in fear and anger. The humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also unpredictable. To allow them to finish rebuilding the ship would mean disaster. Yet to face them too soon might mean defeat. In the Council of the Alien Masters, a decision was made. Scouts would be sent. Watchers would test the humans first. The great fleets would wait. Back on Earth, the shadows around the camp grew bolder. Drones and patrols spotted flashes of movement, figures vanishing into the sand. Tools disappeared. Strange symbols were carved into the dunes. And one night, a guard went missing. They found his footprints leading into the desert, but they ended suddenly, as if he had been lifted into the sky. The leader tightened security. But in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The humans were no longer alone in their efforts. The desert starship pulsed like a living creature. The hum of its rebirth grew louder, sharper, echoing into the stars. Humanity thought they were building a weapon. What they did not know was that the galaxy was already trembling. The shadows were watching. The enemy was preparing. And soon, Earth would no longer be just a planet. It would be a battlefield. The desert night was colder than usual. Stars shone brightly above, like countless eyes watching from the dark sky. The camp was quiet, except for the low hum coming from the half-rebuilt starship. That hum was new. It wasn't made by human machines. It came from deep inside the ship itself, like a heartbeat returning after centuries of silence. Workers whispered about it. Soldiers grew uneasy, and scientists argued through the night. Was it dangerous? Was it a sign of progress? No one had a clear answer. But all of them felt the same truth. Something inside the ship was waking up. The leader walked through the corridors of the ship with a small team. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, bouncing off smooth alien walls. The air felt heavy, almost alive. Every breath they took echoed strangely, as if the ship was listening. They reached the central chamber, the heart of the vessel. For weeks it had been dead. Panels were broken, screens shattered, and the throne-like command chair was silent. But now, lines of light crawled across the walls, glowing slowly, pulsing like veins filled with fire. The scientists quickly unpacked their tools. They placed scanners on the walls, connected wires, and tried to read the strange energy. "It's reacting to us," one whispered. "The more we touch it, the stronger it gets." Suddenly, the central chair lit up. A shockwave of light ran through the chamber. The humans staggered back, shielding their eyes. When the glow faded, the screens around the room were alive, showing symbols that shifted like waves on water. None of them could understand the language, but the message was clear. The ship was awake. The hum grew louder, shaking the floor beneath their boots. The leader stood firm, his eyes locked on the glowing symbols. "It's not just alive," he said slowly. "It's waiting." Back in the desert camp, alarms blared as the ship's energy spiked. Generators overloaded, lights flickered, and soldiers rushed to their stations. The entire fortress shook as if the desert itself had come alive. From the ship's broken engines, streams of light erupted into the night sky, painting the darkness with alien fire. The workers ran in fear, but some stopped and stared in awe. For the first time, the starship looked less like a ruin and more like a giant beast stretching its wings. Then, deep below, in the hidden chamber of pods, something stirred. The sealed pod that glowed faintly before now pulsed with blinding light. Cracks spread across its surface. A sound like cracking ice filled the chamber. The technicians watching screamed into their radios, calling for help. Soldiers rushed down, weapons raised, as the pod split open. Steam poured out, filling the chamber with mist. For a terrifying moment, nothing moved inside. Then, slowly, a shadow stepped forward. But it was not alien. It was only a projection. An image tall and ghostly, standing in the mist. It looked like a figure made of light, its face hidden, its voice echoing without sound. The humans froze. The ghost raised its hand, pointing toward the central chamber, and then vanished. Fear rippled through the camp. Was it a warning, a guide, or a threat? Meanwhile, the leader stood in the command room, staring at the glowing chair. He felt something pressing into his mind. Not words, not images, but emotions. Hunger, anger, hope. The ship was speaking, and somehow he understood. It needs a captain, he whispered. The scientists argued furiously. It's too dangerous. If someone connects to it, the ship could take control of their mind. But the leader stepped forward. He placed his hand on the arm of the chair. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a surge of energy exploded through him. His vision turned white, his ears filled with thunder, and his heart raced as if it would burst. He saw flashes, stars burning, ships exploding, alien armies fleeing. He saw the past of the vessel, a war that destroyed worlds. He saw why it had been abandoned. Its masters feared its power, feared it would consume them. And then he saw something else. The ship opened its memory to him, showing Earth, showing humanity. It had chosen them. When the vision ended, the leader collapsed, gasping for breath. His team rushed to him, but he raised a trembling hand. It's ours now, he said weakly. It listens to us. Above the desert, the ship roared to life. Its engines glowed brighter than the rising sun. The ground shook as sand lifted into the air. The fortress surrounding it crumbled under the force of its awakening. Soldiers and workers fell to their knees as the starship, broken no more, rose slowly from the desert floor. For centuries it had been a corpse. Tonight it was reborn, and far across the galaxy, alien fleets saw the light in their scanners. Fear spread through their ranks. The humans had done the impossible. They had awakened the abandoned beast. The first awakening had begun, and it would change everything. The desert shook for days after the starship's first awakening. Its engines still glowed at night, painting the sand in silver light. Soldiers no longer dared to call it a wreck. It was alive, and it was no longer hiding. But far away, in the cold emptiness of space, the signal of its rebirth spread. The aliens who had abandoned it centuries ago now knew the truth. Humans had awakened their greatest fear. On a distant world, under a sky of twin moons, the alien council gathered. Their tall, dark figures sat in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on the image floating above the chamber. Earth, blue and alive, and the starship rising from its sands. They touched it. One voice hissed. They bonded with it, said another. They will use it, whispered a third. The council did not argue. They had left the ship on Earth because it was too dangerous even for them. Now humans, reckless and bold, had given it breath again. The decision was quick. The fleets would move. Back on Earth, the humans were still celebrating their success. The leader who had touched the command chair was recovering, though his body was weak. But his eyes burned with new fire. He felt the ship inside his mind, a living presence that did not fully belong to him, yet did not reject him. It had chosen humanity, and he would not let it go. But the celebrations ended suddenly when satellites around Earth began sending warnings. Unknown signals, fast and sharp, were approaching from the edge of the solar system. They were not human. The scientists rushed to the command tents, studying the data with pale faces. "It's them," one whispered. "The aliens. They know." The camp froze in fear. Soldiers tightened their grip on weapons, though they knew rifles would mean nothing against ships that crossed galaxies. Workers panicked, some begging to leave. But the leader stood tall, his voice steady. "They abandoned it once. They will not take it back. Not while we stand." The starship hummed louder, almost as if it agreed. Its lights burned brighter, and the sand around it trembled. Days later, the skies over Earth changed. Astronomers confirmed it. Giant fleets were approaching, moving fast, cutting through the void like blades. The aliens had returned. The world watched in terror. News spread across every country. Some called for surrender. Others demanded war. But no one could deny one truth. The aliens were coming for what was now in human hands. In the desert camp, preparations began. Engineers rushed to finish the repairs. Soldiers loaded supplies. The ship itself seemed to help them, guiding their hands, unlocking systems they did not understand. It was no longer just an alien vessel, it was becoming a human weapon. One night, as the leader stood in the command chamber, the ship showed him visions again. He saw alien fleets stretching across the stars, their weapons glowing, their voices calling for Earth's destruction. But he also saw the ship's power, the fire it could unleash, the shields that could stand against any storm. He opened his eyes, sweat dripping down his face. "We can fight them," he whispered. The first alien ships arrived near the edge of the solar system. They were massive, black and sharp like knives, their hulls glowing with energy. They did not hide. They wanted humanity to see them, to fear them. Messages were sent. The aliens spoke through screens in languages no human could fully understand. Yet their meaning was clear: return the ship. Abandon it or be destroyed. But humanity had already made its choice. The leader replied with calm words, broadcast across the stars. "You abandoned it. We rebuilt it. Now it is ours." The aliens did not respond. Instead, their fleets moved closer, forming walls of fire in the dark sky. On Earth, fear spread, but in the desert, courage burned brighter. The starship roared as its engines powered fully for the first time. Its wings of steel unfolded, sharp and deadly. Its weapons, once silent, glowed with fury. The ground split as it lifted into the air, rising above the desert like a god reborn. Soldiers and workers stared in awe, their hearts pounding. Humanity had never built anything like this. It was not just a machine. It was vengeance forged in steel. As the ship climbed into the sky, the leader sat in the command chair, his hands trembling but firm. The ship's voice filled his mind, strong and clear now. "They come for us. Let us show them what we are." Far above, the alien fleets tightened their formation. They thought Earth was weak. They thought humans were children playing with fire. They were wrong. The return of the aliens would not bring surrender. It would bring the first true battle of humanity among the stars. And the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The sky above Earth burned with fire. Alien fleets filled the heavens like a swarm of predators, their weapons glowing, their voices silent but filled with menace. Humanity stood small below them, yet at the heart of the desert, the reborn starship rose like a beast unleashed. For centuries it had been broken, abandoned, forgotten. But now it roared to life, carrying both alien fury and human will. The sandstorm whipped around its massive frame as its engines thundered, shaking the earth. Humanity had rebuilt what others feared to keep alive. Inside the command chamber, the leader sat on the throne-like chair. His body trembled, but his eyes burned with steel. The ship's voice filled his mind, clear, strong, and demanding. "They are here. They want death. Shall we answer?" He whispered back, "Yes. Show them who we are." The alien fleets opened fire first. From orbit, streams of light fell like storms, blazing across the sky. Cities trembled, oceans boiled, and human satellites shattered into dust. The world held its breath, expecting destruction. But the starship moved. The shields flared bright, wrapping Earth in a dome of alien human power. The enemy fire struck it, but the blast scattered like sparks in the wind. Soldiers and workers in the desert stared in awe. For the first time in history, humanity was not helpless. The leader gripped the chair's arms. The ship responded, its weapons charging with a sound like thunder tearing the heavens. Beams of fire shot upward, striking the first alien cruisers. They exploded in blossoms of red light, their wreckage scattering across the void. The galaxy watched in silence. No one had expected this. Humans, fragile, young, primitive, had taken an abandoned corpse and turned it into a weapon that could tear apart fleets. The battle spread. Alien warships swarmed, but the starship tore through them like a hawk among crows. Every blast was precise, every strike filled with fury. Human engineers had given it steel and circuits, but it was the spirit of Earth inside that gave it strength. The aliens tried to surround it, to crush it under numbers. But the ship fought like it had been waiting centuries for this day. Its engines cut through the stars with speed no human craft had ever known. Its cannons burned holes through ships that once ruled galaxies. On Earth, people watched the skies on screens, their fear turning into fire. They cheered as each alien ship exploded. They cried as they saw their defenders fight back against impossible odds. For the first time, humanity believed not just in survival but in victory. The leader felt the ship's memories once more. Battles fought long ago, worlds destroyed by the very fleets now attacking. He felt their cruelty, their pride, their arrogance. And he felt something deeper, the ship's hunger for vengeance. But this time it was not alien vengeance. It was human retribution. He raised his voice, his words carried through the ship. For Earth, for every world they have broken. The starship answered with fire. Its central cannon unleashed a storm so powerful that entire enemy squadrons vanished in a single blast. The desert below shook as if the Earth itself was roaring with the ship. The aliens panicked. For centuries, they had believed themselves untouchable masters of the stars. Now they were being shattered by the very weapon they had thrown away. Their commanders screamed orders, but fear spread faster than command. Some tried to flee, some fought harder, but none escaped the wrath of the reborn ship. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The sky became a battlefield of flames. Alien warships fell one after another, burning into dust. And when the last cruiser finally exploded in silence, the heavens grew still. The humans stood victorious. The broken ship, abandoned in the desert centuries ago, had become their savior. The price of arrogance had been paid. The galaxy had been reminded of a truth it had forgotten. Humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. On the command chair, the leader sat exhausted, his chest heaving. The ship's voice whispered into his mind, softer now, almost gentle. We are not finished. More will come. But you have shown them. They will remember you. He closed his eyes and whispered back, then let them remember. The desert was silent once more, but not empty. It carried the echo of thunder, the promise of fire, and the story of how humanity turned an abandoned relic into absolute retribution. And in the far corners of the galaxy, whispers spread. Whispers of Earth. Whispers of humans who had taken a ghost ship and turned it into a legend. Whispers that promised the galaxy would never again look at humanity the same way. For they had stood against fleets and shattered them. For they had turned fear into fire. For they had claimed their place among the stars. This was not just survival. This was absolute retribution.